Good morning. Happy Thursday, March 23rd, 2023. Here in City Hall. We are in our committee room on the second floor of City Hall. And I'm going to call this special meeting of the City Council to order at this time. We will be continuing our budget request hearing. And so at this time, I ask our clerk if she will call the roll.
Good morning, Madam Mayor. I'm calling the roll, Madam Mayor O'Neill.
I am here.
Mayor Pro Tem Middleton. Councilmember Caballero. Councilmember Freeman.
Present.
Councilmember Halsey Hyman.
Present.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Williams. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this time, I'll turn it over to our budget and management services director, Mr. John Allore. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor O'Neill, members of council. John Allore, Director of Budget and Management Services. We have 2 hours this morning to finish the process of discussing the council budget requests. And this morning's meeting will be facilitated by Lyndsay from our innovation team, Lyndsay Gavin and her staff. And so we don't waste a whole lot of time, I'm going to turn things over to her. And we'll just, unless the city manager has any other comments, and we'll continue the process from where we left off 2 weeks ago, Friday.
All right, good morning, Mayor, members of council, and Manager Page. As John said, my name is Lyndsay Gavin. I manage the innovation team here at the city, along with my colleagues and teammates, Mary Grace Stone King and Eric Pena, and our assistant director, Holland. I will essentially be your MC and timekeeper for this morning. And Christina Reardon, assistant director for budget management services, will be handling sort of the visuals. Same process that we did last time. So as a brief reminder, the folks from TJ Cog had started walking us through an exercise to categorize council budget requests. Green means that the request will be put forth to the city manager for consideration. Red means that the request will not be included for consideration for this upcoming fiscal year. You'll notice you don't have a yellow option today because what we're doing is we're actually taking everything that was yellow last time, having a open floor for Q&A and discussion, and then designating those yellows as either green or red. So we don't plan on going back through the whole list. We have 11 items that were yellow from last time. So I would bring those up. I'll probably read the titles and maybe the brief descriptions, and then I'll open it to you all for questions and comments. I am going to set a timer for about 6 minutes for each of them. So if we get to the point where the timer goes off, if we could try to just wrap the last spot or two there, then we will go ahead and decide whether those are going to green or red. I've got folks taking some detailed notes again to capture this discussion. Anything that is green at the end of today will go back to affected or associated departments at the city for some further analysis before being provided to Manager Page. So just to reiterate, red doesn't necessarily mean an idea doesn't have merit. It just means that it maybe isn't part of the annual budget process, or it's not likely to incur budget needs in the next fiscal year. Does that all make sense?
Can you just say that one more time?
Sorry, about the reds. So red doesn't necessarily mean an idea, it doesn't have merit or isn't supported. It might mean that it's not part of the annual budget process, or that it won't have budget needs in the next fiscal year, which is what we're setting the budget for the next fiscal year.
A quick process question.
Yes.
So there were some items that we didn't get to at all in the last round. Are we going through those today in addition to the ones that were yellow?
Are there ones that we did not vote on at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all of the items up to the point that we ended, there was a decision made about them.
Right.
So the ones that we're gonna be starting with today are the ones that went to yellow. None, I don't believe any went to red. During the first meeting.
There were some that we didn't get to at all, so we're doing those next, or?
So the
or we're not
ones,
talking about
We got to an initial vote of all of them. We just
Yes,
didn't
we
get to a
did.
discussion.
those? Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments before we go ahead with the first one?
I just want other clarity, so again, just we go over it with the yellow, because I can't remember what the yellow was again.
We are not voting yellow today, but they
Okay.
were originally yellow, if we needed further discussion or points of clarity or had questions,
So today we're only voting red.
red or green.
Oh, I don't have the green.
That's okay.
Oh, that's great. Okay, thank you.
Yes, no problem. All right, so with that, the one that we left off on last time, it will be number 3 on the, if you're following along on the table. And that is the City of Durham Mentoring Alliance Collaborative Pilot Program. This is Council Member Lyndsay Hyman submitted this request. Brief description is City of Durham Mentoring Alliance Collaborative Pilot Program to enhance community partners who mentor youth and provide a one-stop shop for community members to obtain updated information regarding access to youth mentoring services. I know we began this discussion last time, so I believe where we left off was centered around whether this is a directive or a budget impact, and a directive may or may not have budget impact. So I will open the floor to you all to sort of pick up that discussion.
Yeah, and I think that was the discussion, I think Mayor Pro Tem had brought that up in terms of it being more of maybe asking something for the Office of Youth to do. Whether it be, and I don't know, Mayor Pro Tem, you can correct me if I'm saying it wrong. Oh, I'm sorry, I have a. Sorry. Yeah, so could you correct me if I'm not, re-emphasizing the way you had kind of started the discussion, Mayor Pro Tem? In terms of it maybe falling under the youth office and not us having a budget item.
Thank you, Councilman. Good morning, everyone, Madam Mayor, colleagues, pardon my tardiness. Councilmember Romani, this isn't the reception thing.
No,
Okay,
no,
this is a separate,
Yeah,
okay.
this was something separate that because, through, just meeting with people in the community, a lot of families really are not knowing how to access certain services. And, just in terms of what happened last night with the, youth dying again, and shot, it's just like, it's laid on, well, the fact that my process of with it was even before all of this, just the gun violence and us trying to prevent crisis, with youth.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And to be sure, there's no controversy about the animating spirit of this and our need for mentoring, the importance of mentoring. There's nobody here that's going to argue with you about that. I think just in terms of the nuts and bolts of the budget process and where this would sit, where it would be housed, and exactly what the 230,000 represents. I think Councilmember Johnson weighed in on this as well about changing the charge or altering or augmenting the workflow of the youth department. Because my understanding was that as far as a clearinghouse or residents getting information, if there was some kind of list or menu of options that were just in the Office of Youth and when folk called, they could just kind of refer them to that as opposed to changing and pardon me if I'm doing violence to it. I'm trying to remember our conversation. My notes in front of me. Rather than changing the workflow of the Office of Youth. I just think there was some ambiguity as to where this would be housed, what the job of the FTE would be. And if this is something, if you were looking for kind of a one-stop shop to obtain updated information, if you just take that sentence, then just obtain updated information, that could be, I guess, something as simple as a listing, a menu, that whenever folk call, like they call one call, they can get directed somewhere. If they call the Office of Youth, hey, what are our mentoring options? Here's a list that you can look down.
So But so that really is what spearheaded it for me, because when I was trying to do the mentoring collaboration celebration, the list that we have is not updated. And I know that I was told by a staff member that it's just a Herculean job to keep that going, because there's so many programs that are, folding or they're not funded. And so that's really what also spearheaded it for me.
Got you. So Councilman, is that a $230,000 fix?
No, I didn't put that in there.
Okay,
I didn't put any numbers, so yeah,
how much will it cost?
I.
We have the money part now.
Yes, we do. So I think, part of getting through some of these items is to try to, with the department trying to estimate the cost. If a department would have to take on a new FTE, they would have to have salaries, benefits, operating, supplies for the function. And so there are times when we do estimate that, and that is probably where the dollar figure. The majority of $230,000 would be the FTE that was requested. And that, FTE in this particular, process would be would be proposed to be someone dedicated to only do that work according to what the request shows.
I was gonna ask, is it possible that it's set up more like a contracted annual update? Just someone who comes in and does an update annually? Or like every 6 months, someone's coming in and doing an update, like there's a contract with someone to actually go through the list and be sure they're there. As opposed to an FTE.
So the answer to that is yes, but what I would like to, highlight is that the Office on Youth is a city county function, and the county maintains a very large list of public, organizations that are mostly nonprofits that provide resources to the community, including youth, in a whole lot of areas. And they have, resources that, to the best of their ability to reach out to all of these organizations when their executive director change or their location change, they do try to keep it updated. And there's a link from the Office on Youth's page directly to a mentoring group of folks. So that already exists. It is just that, just like in the totality of the database, it may not always be completely updated. So that what you all have been discussing, it does exist. I think the conversation that was had, was a result of some of it not being up to date or some of it not being accurate, but not just in the mentoring section. It is all kinds of resources that are showing there. So to bring, to have a contractor just look at one section of that, when the county already has, resources who are really trying to do it, it's not my, my goal here to say, you can't do that. It can be done, but
I appreciate that. I think maybe it's more like an audit of what they have, because we have this youth facing problem, or we have this youth facing issue. And specifically around mentoring, if we need the youth aspect audited on it by like an every 6 months basis, I think that that's something we can support or not. But I do think that it needs to be updated, and if it's not the county, we can't just keep going back and forth. So, thank you.
We are about at the 6 minutes for discussion, so I might ask for the last comment or so.
Good morning. Also apologies for being late this morning. Just quickly, I'm just curious about what conversations you've had with the county, because it is a joint office. And, is there some of these positions that we're starting to do when it overlaps with the city and the county, we seek co-funding for things. So it's not just in the city back, especially something to do with both city and county. So I'm just curious, Councilmember, what conversations you've had on the county side, with commissioners there or with staff, et cetera.
Yeah, I haven't had a lot of conversation. It was really mainly around me trying to, I'm sorry, can you hear me? Me trying to organize the mentoring celebration, and then speaking with some members, even with some commissioners. But again, their stuff is sometimes not up to date either. And again, the basis of this is that when I'm in the community, families are, saying to me like, I need to be able to access these services. And then I was frustrated just trying to figure out what's updated, what's not. I mean, I have plaques in my office for organizations that was on that list that don't exist. You know what I mean? So just imagine families, especially in a time when the city is really facing the issues with youth and gun violence and safety, when they need to go someplace that they can't ascertain, what's up to date, what's not.
I may have gotten lost in the conversation. Are we asking for an FTE or are we asking for this information you provided? Just
Well, I was asking for an FTE because that was saying how it could be done, because really, that's not I guess the premise of what the Office of Youth does at this point in terms of, what their focus is. So yeah, so. And really to have someone bring together the mentoring program so that this way we know, what is going on. Because again, while the county might be doing it, I know that we fund majority of the Office of Youth city. And so we have youth in the city that are struggling. And so this is what we really think about.
so at some point, do we, I think to Councilmember Freeman's point, do we look at, or Javier, I'm not sure who said it, do we look at our request and see how it already fits into what's happening? I'm thinking about the Office on Community Intervention and the county and then the Office of Youth here. Because I think what Councilmember Hogan is asking for is necessary, but I think it's literally a minor shift in what's already being done. At least that's my interpretation.
I do know that on the, for the summertime, it's the joint, the committee where the city, county and the school sit in that space. We are coordinating what we believe the offerings will be for our children during the summer. And I do know that there is a need for us to kind of organize what the nonprofit community is going to be doing this summer. How do we make sure that our residents have an opportunity to know what those are? And that process already begun. I think we can probably look at through that lens what we're both doing. We have primarily focused on the summer, but that was to just get a base, kind of get a base idea of what the city, the county, and the schools will have as an offering. But certainly the need to see what's going on in the nonprofit arena, I think will be beneficial for our young people this summer. So we've already started that, and that may be this place where we can sort of dig in to that side of it.
Okay, do we feel ready to make a green red decision on this? What?
No.
You're gonna have to make this, just,
Okay,
yeah. If
okay,
you ask us if we feel ready, we'll talk forever. You're just gonna have to call time
okay,
and make us vote.
Make us move.
okay, then I think we'll call time on that one now and take a vote. And then we'll go on to the next one.
I literally don't know what I'm voting on. Is it an FTE? Is it expanding what's already existing? And with due respect, and it's this, I don't know what the vote is. I don't know if this is the even rises to the level of an FTE. Go ahead.
So I think, it's gonna be efficient for after you all, really have a discussion about it, if you're going to vote yes or no about what has been proposed, which does include a FTE, or if you modify it, that giving us that direction as to what the modification is. But I think you are gonna have to vote yes or no on what has been proposed, and just, while it's already been summarized, it would be us creating a new FTE in the city government, the way that it's been proposed, to narrow down a focus area for youth that is mentorship and do additional work, in that area. We do a lot of mentoring. We are not primarily directly involved in, just that one focus area in our Office on Youth. When I say we do mentoring, we do it as an organization in our different departments like police or in Parks and Recreation, we have mentoring programs that are considered mentoring. Coordinating it within the government and within the community is not something we currently do. And it would, it would tend to be a fairly heavy lift for a one person to do that anyway. But, we're here to get direction, from the council on what we should try to include or not. So, hopefully that's.
Councilwoman. I just wanted to ask, if it's similar to how we do a coordination for homelessness services in the community. I'm just trying to line it up and see like if it's a similar situation or not. Because it sounds like what we do in homeless services, and it's the opportunity to do it with mentorship and youth. So that's a little, we have a model we can use.
Homeless services is, is a continuum of care. It has, a very, very large, large compared to this budget, and it's primarily, federally funded, and the city also puts funding into, that program from Forever Home Durham. I believe when the deep dive on homelessness came forward, and I'm just going by my memory, that could have had as much as $9 million invested in, homeless services, coordinating, providing the services and those kinds of things. So I am, and that would possibly have included some one-time funding during the COVID pandemic. But I can say for sure that the budget and the level of effort that goes into servicing homelessness, through the different partners in the continuum of care, is certainly nowhere near this.
So, like I said, I think we have a place where we can start to see exactly where the gaps are. So maybe, and I think, if I remember correctly, Dr. Jose Harmon did not put an amount of that. That may have been the estimate by staff. So can we consider a lesser amount until we can determine whether in fact we need an FTE, so that maybe we set aside a small amount of money that we can ask the county and the schools to match, because I would think that they have an interest in this area as well. And so just to say that we'll have a small pot of money, kind of there, maybe $10,000 that we can get them to match, and that will give us a little floor to really dig down and figure out what we need. We don't need the funds, we'll give them back, and we do need the funds. They're just sort of a placeholder. So I don't know that we can do that now.
Just for clarification, so, yes, and the cost estimate came from us, and that was based on we saw FTE. And in a lot of cases, the analysts had very quick time to go back through the clerk to try to estimate what that is. So we're not saying that cost is necessarily what is needed for the program. I think with a lot of these, you're going to see, well, wait, is that budgetary FY24 later, or is that we need to work on our process a little better? So what the mayor is suggesting is absolutely doable.
I just wanted to say, I appreciate the item. I'm not prepared to fund an FTE yet. I feel like there has to be a lot of analysis across our county and our schools. And quite frankly, I think that it should be government funded, because if we're talking about our youth, it hits everyone.
Thank you. I also, my main concern with this is that I don't want it to impact the work in the Office on Youth. And I don't think that it is our role at all, actually, to be directing staff in that way. And I know that we cannot at this point, even if we vote for this item, it is also not our role to decide like where in the city that person, if we were to, get a $30,000 contract, like how that would be managed at this point, actually ever if it's 30,000. But I just wanted to express concern that the direction of the Office on Youth would be impacted, and would prefer for this kind of a program to be either done in the county, which already does, which already has a list, as our city manager told us, of these kind of resources, or contracted out.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I appreciate my colleagues' comments. I'm not as concerned about that, largely in part because I think we've already heard that, you know, we can tweak this as we go down the road, and there's flexibility in it. The mention of youth by Councilmember Hyman doesn't actually reference the youth, the office of youth, uses the word youth. And I think there might be this natural assumption that that might be where it's housed. So we don't know where this is going to be housed. And I'm comfortable with forwarding this, knowing that we can, you know, tweak it or house it as appropriately. I would say, I do think we insert ourselves all the time. I mean, telling the department that we want you to go 24/7 citywide, I think is a pretty significant insertion as well. I think this is far less than that. Not saying I'm against it, because I am, but not I'm against being for it. But so I think this far less below the threshold of, you know, actual insertion in departmental matters, which I think we do quite frequently actually, which is fine, you know, particularly during budget season. So I'm comfortable with advancing this and with staff doing the necessary work down the road to, you know, if we need to tweak it or if we spend the money, we may not fill the position. So I'm comfortable with it as stated by Councilman Biden.
I did want to kind of co-sign Councilman Johnson's note around the office. I just specifically acknowledging that they've been focused on youth-led and like youth-initiated projects. And I would like it to stay that way. And so I do support moving forward with the youth mentoring resource, you know, trying to make sure that it's audited and it's actually correct, to know how hard it is to find those resources in the community. So that's all right.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so are we comfortable with it where it is, or do we need to modify amounts or?
Or where it is.
Where it is?
Yeah, we can.
We ready to vote?
I'm sorry, are we voting on $230,000?
My understanding that heard what Mr. Allore said, that that number was arrived at by staff. It may not be the number. And to be honest, and I'm comfortable with what, at least my sense of reading of this, I don't know that this is gonna rise to an FTE or even a full-time FTE position to start with. So I'm confident that that 230 grand threshold, I'm gonna seriously want to know what the person is doing. If we need all of that based upon what I'm reading now. So I'm comfortable with it, but I don't think it's gonna cross that threshold. And I'm more comfortable with that based on what Mr. Allore shared.
I think we should, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would like to insert, none of this is, science, some of it is art. But if we actually pass an item through to us to give it to consideration, sometimes it is a pretty big difference, the way we analyze it, if we're gonna bring a new FTE into the organization, or if we're just gonna have a pot of money in order for us to use to try to work out an issue. So if it is going to go forward, even if it's not the 230, I would like the direction of whether or not you're looking for us to add an FTE or not.
I would think that may be a little bit premature at this time to add an FTE. I think that we do need to coordinate with the other two branches that would have some say in youth issues. So I would prefer that we do that as an organized effort by the three bodies of government.
Yeah, and I agree. And like I said, the rationale was for us to just kind of get another area that's looking at this, because the youth is all through. This is not the city, it's the county, it's everybody. And so I don't have a problem with it being modified.
I'm just actively okay with moving that, including that.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Are you okay with removing that?
Yes, that was, again, this conversation. I mean, if it has to be,
Could we put like a up to amount, like to the mayor's suggestion, would that be helpful?
And if we were to say 30,000, like in city, county, and schools, up to 30,000 each would be 90. Would that be that's a good start? I would
Yeah.
think. I mean, maybe you can have this conversation.
I'm fine with even up to 50. I just don't want to include an FTE, and I do want to push our partners.
I would be in agreement with Councilman, if we
We're moving forward the idea
with the pot of money of 50,000,
up to,
50,000. Hopefully we won't.
All right, so can we vote on the item with no FTE up to 50,000? Yeah.
That took us how long?
That was I'll hear my timer go off on the other.
Okay.
First one is profit.
Okay.
All right, so the next item is community conversations reboot. Description, restart the community conversations resident engagement program. This was submitted by Councilmember Johnson. I am gonna let my timer go off this time, but
Yeah, happy to have any more questions. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. It wouldn't have a strong impact on staff because the budget anticipates contracting it out. I think the question is just whether this is a priority for this year.
Any discussion?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Johnson. My understanding that it wasn't an idea to do it every year because it was around PD.
Yeah, it would be every other. I mean, we haven't done it for 4 years.
Right.
So, but our original plan pre-COVID was to do it every other year. This proposal is just a year. It's just to do it for a year.
I'm
but-
just saying the recurring, and I'm like, it's not recurring every year, it's recurring 160,000 or 663,000.
You're right, that's probably, that probably shouldn't say recurring. I mean, I think you could do it every other year, but that's not what I'm asking for right now, just
You're just asking for the current year.
to do this.
Thank you.
Can you tell me what those were since you haven't done that for years?
Yeah, so it was a budget engagement program. We collaborated with the county and the school district. There were big community conversations in, high school auditoriums or gyms with city staff, with a variety of staff from the city as well as staff from other governments, engaging people in deeper roundtable conversations around budget and prioritization for government spending. A couple of the things that I thought were really useful about them, one, our residents often don't know, nor should they have to, which government is responsible for which aspects of community work here in Durham. And so that gave us an opportunity for people to come and address any issue that they had that might be government related, whether that was something that was being handled by the city or the county or the schools. The other thing that I liked was it gave an opportunity for a little bit deeper engagement than we usually get with residents. For example, at a budget hearing where we would get 3 minutes to speak, you don't really get to go as in depth as, a roundtable conversation where you're having more in-depth engagement with folks over a period of time. The tweak that I made to this proposal is that in the last round, we just had an open invitation for anybody to come. What I think would be interesting to try is to do kind of a variation on our current survey where we randomly sample the community, but instead of asking them to just fill out a survey, we ask them to come and do an engagement process. A little bit like jury selection, except it's not mandatory, and we would incentivize them with a small stipend and, provide food, translation, childcare, and those sorts of things to try to encourage people to come. And so we would have both the benefits of the in-depth engagement that we got from community conversations, as well as like the breadth and representation of the community that we get from the survey. So yeah, I hope that's enough context, but happy to answer questions.
I just have a question, and then after all of that is the evaluation piece, and then.
Yeah, part of the contract with the contractor would include writing up an evaluation for us to use in decision making.
I think you may have just answered my question. I was going to ask, what entails $163,000?
Yeah, I put a budget in the actual request, so I can look that up, but it's essentially, it's the cost of facilitation, stipends for the participants, cost of food, childcare, interpretation services, and the facilitators would also be responsible for the evaluation fees. So it's really those big things. And probably we would contract with the organization that would then manage all of that, so that we would have one contract and then they would manage the other services that would come in. So we would have to do that on our own.
Who did it last time?
Last time we did it ourselves, the city staff did it, in collaboration with county staff, but city staff did it. And it was a pretty big lift. When we were contemplating restarting this right before COVID happened, we had decided to contract it out, and we're in conversations with a contractor when we canceled the program because of public health reasons.
think that's part of my concern. The reason we haven't done it in 4 years is kind of like we have a shortage of staff. And we're stretching already and pushing them to do something more feels a little bit overzealous right now. So I'm not opposed to doing it. I think I'm just opposed to doing it right this moment, like in this next fiscal year, knowing that we have such a high shortage. I know that we've discussed in the previous item, how much we want to insert ourselves into what staff is doing in their workload. And I think this item really pushes us into what staff would be doing. Because those were, they were extensive outreach, extensive engagement, extensive collection of information and an extensive pulling in and I just don't know that this year is a good year to do that.
Yeah, so to clarify, I'm not asking city staff to do this. This is a contract with an outside contractor who would be doing it. So it would have no impact on the city.
And so no city staff would have to be engaged in this at all.
I think they could be engaged if they wanted to be, but it is not, the budget proposal does not require city staff engagement. It is entirely contractor led.
Is there a contractor that does this type of work?
We had
Knows the city.
We had found one in 2020 who was able to do this. We would have to put out an RFP.
So in 2020, there was no staff involvement as well.
Well, we didn't do it. We canceled it. But the proposal was that it would be that we would contract it out, similar to the way that we contract out engagement in NIS. We would do an RFP, we would bring in a contractor, they would be responsible for implementing the program.
That is 6 minutes, so if we could do last comment or so.
Did we not just allocate funding for small groups or mini grants or something to do community engagement or I can't remember the name of it, but it was like allocating funds for small groups to go around and do knock on doors, make sure residents were aware of the resources. Something that we recently just approved just a few months ago, or last year rather, that came back to us after the money. I cannot remember which organization it was. Help me out, please.
So I believe you're speaking about the We Are the Ones.
We are the ones, yeah.
And it did come back to you for contracting, that certainly is a contracted service. It was not specifically budget engagement or budget related.
Right, so I was trying to see what would be the similarities between We Are the Ones and this initiative.
Madam Mayor. Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. If I might, I remember the community resident engagement program. It was wildly successful. We got massive amounts of information from residents and citizens. And one of the constant refrains you hear in Durham oftentimes as well, I didn't know, you didn't do enough, and you can't just send emails or phone calls. These were really vibrant and engaged lively. And it was a monstrous task, but I think the information we got and the goodwill that was created amongst residents and just the civic engagement that I think promoted in our city really reflected what people think of Durham. When they think of Durham and our citizenry and public engagement. I think Councilmember Freeman, and concern about staff lift is valid, but everything we're going to do is going to at some point, affect staff in one way or another. That's why we're constantly hiring, and we're going to have a job fair soon. But I think that if we can contract this out, the benefit that we got from that resident engagement program, I remember well. I don't know what price tag to put on it, but I think the data and the goodwill and the engagement was invaluable around that budget season, as I recall. So this is something I would very much be in favor of, particularly if we can insulate the staff and the amount of work they did last time. If we can successfully contract this out, I think the benefits of it far outweigh the cost of it, as I recall the initiative.
All right, so let's put this one to the vote. Community conversations reboot. All right. The next item, community design lab pilot. This was submitted by Councilmember Williams. Establish a pilot design lab related to the future of creation of community-centric design thinking hub. I will open the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you. This was basically an opportunity to really invoke more community engagement that is solution focused and solution oriented. It is a project that would be not managed by city or city staff. This will be supporting an outsourced suite of nonprofit organizations housed at Lyndsay, where there's already infrastructure, human resource and other resources involved. This would be an initiative to basically have a public-private partnership, basically, or in some sense, a public-public partnership, considering the amount of nonprofits that would be involved. But considering we're always hearing about community engagement and, staff is doing their work and then council making decisions, many stakeholders just feel, like they're not really engaged. This is an opportunity for them to go to this space and just be a part of, solving issues or working on issues that would be related to, for example, things like, transit or homelessness or food insecurity. So it's just as important.
My first thought was, could that be a part of the community conversations reboot?
Right, so I was over here asking questions to Councilmember Johnson because I think that based on the we're the ones policy where folks are already out doing this, having community conversations, and then this, which according to Councilmember Johnson is slightly different, but it's still community engagement. The only difference with my proposal is there would be an actual brick and mortar location where folks can go to. But I will say this on the record, if we're going to invest $200,000 into We're the Ones and then $163,000 into community conversations, considering my usually fiscally conservative ways, I will actually pull this if we're going to do those things.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, I think that this area of inquiry could definitely be put in, we could put that into a community conversations thing for sure.
And I'm sure I could talk to the organizations that are signed on to this to probably be a hosting site for these community conversations. So I'm willing to work with you on that.
I would also add WGP.
Thank you. I just want to thank Councilmember Williams for that offer. I think that the community conversations will drive a lot of the things that are listed here.
All right, so you're gonna pull that one with the notation that idea is going to be included in the community.
Community conversations, there may be already ongoing policy with contract with the one.
Okay.
It's no need to triple that, and we just say time.
All right, thank you so much.
Take it and run. I'm moving.
All right, the next one is Durham Symphony Orchestra, also submitted by Councilmember Williams.
I thought we did this one. I'm sorry.
You thought this was a green already?
I thought it was a green already.
Oh, I thought it was a Durham convention center.
Or maybe it's the convention
The
center.
convention center was on.
Okay.
We did not, they've audited this list.
I was going to intentionally stay quiet on that. Still wasn't yellow. I mean, it was up for question. So yeah, considering I just saved this time, I hope I'm gonna get graces now. No, this is really just an opportunity to just re-energize and reignite the cultural side of our city. I think BPAC is a living well organization. Example of what I'm getting at here, and what I stated before, most, mid-sized cities to larger cities, things that really shape their character are, the arts. And we have a Durham Symphony and Orchestra that is really, really good. But no one really knows. So I'm just trying to create an opportunity for folks to have another reason to come to Durham spend money at show, go to shows, spend money in the community and leave.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, Councilmember Williams, you had me at hello on the symphony. That's spent a lot of money at Mamandi Concert Hall in Raleigh, listening to the North Carolina Symphony. So I would love a vibrant symphony right here in Durham. Madam Manager, we give money to the Durham Arts Council. I know that the symphony sometimes practice in the facility at the Durham Arts Council. And it helped me with my recollection. I thought that the pile of money that the Arts Council got, that the symphony got some of that, or was at least in line to. Is that not correct? Are they not getting money from block money to the Arts Council?
So I want to make sure before I would answer a question like that, that I actually had, the actual details of the agreement.
Mhm.
What I would say is that is a management agreement that we have with the Durham Arts Council. And there's a scope of work and services that they do. The Durham Arts Council has its own program. So they, certainly have grant programs, and we're not there, we are not the only way that they receive funding. I do know that the Durham is probably on the upcoming agenda, I believe it is, where we are going to execute the ARPA contract with the Durham Arts Council, which is, I believe it's $1 million. And that is going to be, according to the scope that they presented when they requested that grant. So I've talked about a couple of things, but I am not in a position here today to say whether or not the block grant program that they have had from time to time includes the symphony.
I know the dance wanted to celebrate our ancestors, Bob and Shucks organization housed, and part of the management agreement is that they give office space and space to different artistic initiatives in the city. Councilmember Williams, if $100,000 a year recurring, what is your view that there? This is for what's it for the yearly?
Yeah, so most professional symphonies do have salary musicians, and most real symphonies have salary musicians. And we have professionals. We only have, I believe, we have a full-time salary maestro, and I believe we have maybe a few first-year leads. But the funds that they're getting from the Arts Council is sufficient. So I wasn't aware of the ARPA, and I thought I did fairly lot of research here. So, yeah, so I will say to staff, if we have time on this, let's make this request also contingent upon, just the layout of what that ARPA block grant would be. If they're getting funding for that, I want to take this request out of the budget. If not, and I'm also okay with just reducing the amount on a recurring basis to be more supplemental rather than just fully funded. I know back in the day, we used to fund just simply directly.
One final question. So is it your view that the money would be mainly the salary?
Salaries and concerts that would, the production of it, yeah.
Gotcha.
And also to be supplemental to the money that they're already raising. They do, anything that I request is supplemental. There's already a funding source that they're generating.
I know the clock is on me, but I want to be very, very clear that the $1 million ARPA contract is money that is, is programmed according to what they requested the grant for. So, when you said you wanted to kind of see what that was about, I'm certain there's probably not $100,000 allocated out of that for the symphony. So I wanted to just really make that part very, very, very clear.
Yeah, the Councilmember Prudence point, it is also offered one injection. I am trying to, in this proposal, have more of a sustaining support for the orchestra. But I'm not hard set on a figure. I just want to make sure we can start bringing it back to the forefront.
Thank you. So my main questions about this proposal were in relation to our current process that we have for funding events. I know that we have groups, that do, that do big annual events. So the orchestra, I know, does stuff ongoing, and actually so do ADF and, Full Frame, those kind of organizations also have stuff during the year, but like fund a big, have a big event. We have like a festival funding pot in general services, and we converted that several years ago from a process that was kind of just the same groups get money every year through a sort of informal relationship with the city to a process where groups apply and are evaluated. And there's a pot of money, and it comes through, gets evaluated by the Cultural Advisory Board, and the money goes to general services. I'm wondering if this item might be well placed within that process. It wouldn't guarantee money to the symphony, but it would give them the opportunity to get city money in the same way that all those other groups do. And I'm wondering if they have ever applied for that, if they have some kind of big like annual signature event or something like that, that could be the mechanism by which we support them.
Yeah, I think that would be the balancing act. The main foundational point here is to have some sustaining support, funding support that would give it some type of viability ongoing. And again, they do, generate funds from the Arts Council. They generate funds from their concerts, sponsor their program booklets and so on and so forth. So, 100K, considering after I've done some more reading into the other budget requests from departments and ours here, I would be willing to lower the amount, but still I'm asking for sustaining recurring amount to the symphony. And I think that applying or being in that competitive pool would be potentially something additional.
You're about at time, so maybe last comment.
Okay, I just want to follow up. My concern isn't the amount, my concern is the process. I think there are a lot of organizations that would like this kind of ongoing support from the city, and I worry about us getting into a position where we are. I feel like this moves us a little bit away from the process that we had previously had around events and around like funding cultural events. And I think that shift in process was good. I'm not, like, I worry that this opens the door for, every other organization that come to us and ask for money outside of that process. And as an example, I have had conversations with the folks who run Durham Pride who also want a annual regular allocation from the city, and told them that they should apply in the events process, like the events and festivals process, because I think that that's a good, way to figure out who gets with a limited pot of money for this kind of thing, who gets funding and who doesn't. And so I worry that this leaves us open to making decisions that aren't really process-based, that are just, kind of based on, whatever a single council member is willing to advocate for, rather than a fair process that looks at all the cultural work happening in the city and includes staff and resident buy-in and all that.
Yeah, I think I may have been looking at this and the way we annually fund campaign for change and things like that gets an annual $50,000. So this also had an economic component to it because it's generating revenue, getting people to the city to spend. So, let other folks speak.
Here at time.
Thank you. Two points of clarification. I'm a little confused on our process because I appreciate the Madam Clerk sending us our list. There are some items that I remember speaking about at the last that I thought we'd already moved forward, and that list just came to us, and I thought this was agreed already. So that's why I'm so confused. Okay. Okay.
I had two that were not. This was one.
Okay, because in the list that I'm seeing, I've seen green, so that's why, and everyone has that email. That's why I'm confused with one. Second, because we're undergoing the cultural, like our big cultural roadmap work, I am curious about, my hope is that from that work, we're gonna have like that deeper analysis and understanding of like the cost of funding cultural work, including this. And hopefully a process that expands that funding. To Councilmember Johnson's point, we have a process, I just think we probably don't have enough in there. But I also want the folks who are doing that work to provide us the recommendations that they're going to give us. And so in a way, I also like we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit. So yes, I want the symphony. I think we need to fund it. I just feel a little bit conflicted about, okay, but I can name 50 other cultural things I also want to fund, and I really want a clear process and the recommendations from the work that's already being done. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, how much was in the cultural arts? Fund right now?
So. I believe, so I'm wearing a lot of hats today, but I believe that the amount is somewhere in the $200,000 range. And it is maybe a little more than that, but it is in the base budget. And it is managed in the general services department, and, 7, 8, 9 organizations actually make proposals and get funded on an annual basis. It comes to council, as an agenda item once the organizations are selected.
Thank you. I really, I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate you bringing that up. I think the process is important, but I do think it's also important for council members to advocate for what they think should be included when, we ask for budget items. And so I fully support moving forward with the green. I think that it's also like, this is something that's been missed in many conversations over the years. And so I think it's important to at least show that we want to make sure that our maestro and the first chairs are supported in the same way we talk about graffiti artists or folks who are in the streets busting and so many other art forms. And so I just think it's a good proposal, and
I don't know if I might quickly, knowledgeable at the time. To Councilmember Freeman's point, by definition, the council request is a council member elevating something that they think is important. And if we get the votes, fine. If it falls down, then not. If we can convince our colleagues to go with that, that's the very definition of this process of council budget request. I do also want to say that, I draw a distinction between annual events and institutions that have ongoing programmatic output that's germane and relevant to Durham's very fabric. I mean, the symphony bears our name, and it's not like a one-time thing year. It's ongoing, and with respect to organizations kind of getting special due. I mean, a few years ago, Mayor Schul had El Centro inserted into our budget for a recurring amount for a position for El Centro. Who's not to say that the Durham committee didn't want that, or other organizations did not want which I supported, and we all supported. So the idea that there aren't, when council members elevate something, organizations that get, recurring kind of consideration in our budget that's a well-established precedent, with us. So I'm comfortable with supporting. I'm very partial to classical music. I love the symphony. I'm very comfortable with supporting, but I do also, Councilmember Williams, and you've been very gracious. If you want to take a look at some of the other funding sources, if you're amenable to that, but I don't think that your recommendation should have an asterisk next to it because, it's a council recommendation. They're all council recommendations.
All right, let's go ahead and vote on this item and then go to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Is there 100? Was that 100 grand? Or did you change it?
Let's leave, I'm okay with leaving that up to staff. I can't wait to increase it.
They up to. Yeah.
Up to. Cultural art and advisory board needs one back.
John will love the up.
Those two words. All right, our next yellow is Employee Ownership Technical Support Pilot Program. This request is to provide $150,000 over 2 years to develop a program to support the creation and growth of employee-owned companies in Durham. This was submitted by Councilmember Johnson, and I will set my 6 minutes.
Thank you for the timekeeping. Yeah, I think I talked about this a little bit last time, and for folks who have been here, also talked about it a couple of years or no, last year, so everybody was here. About again contracting out some services for local cooperative businesses. I've had conversations last year with OEWD about this. I've not had updated conversations with them because of some leadership challenges in the department, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, this would be a contract. There's a nonprofit that is available that does this kind of work. It's over 2 years to develop a program that would support employee-owned businesses, and if that was successful, then, you know, could decide whether to continue that or not. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thank you. I remember this item from last year. I'm supportive of it, just out of curiosity, and I know Councilmember Williams' Durham vocational apprenticeship pilot was already approved. I'm just wondering if there's a way to think about aligning some of that work, because I can see, as folks are entering that, like, I want them to know all of their, I can see a lot of trade folks benefiting from both of these things, but folks in the trades, like, understanding what all of their options are around, you know, launching your own business can be extremely challenging. So I see an opportunity for those two spaces to kind of not merge, but like work, so, you know, really close.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would love it if in all of the work that we do around business development and employee ownership was something that the city was encouraging and making clear the benefits of. I think that, you know, this could be a path to doing that more.
What I learned shortly after making my proposal for the trades apprenticeship program was the Office on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion also is submitting something very similar. And the organization that I did this analysis with, the Ironworkers Association, which is not just ironworkers, it's now all trades. They actually have a pot of funds that once you complete the 14-week program on site, you actually get funding support to become your own LLC. So that would be something that would be supportive of this as well.
Any other discussion? So I would just ask you, I don't know if Johnson felt like that was enough to cover it, so if you could.
No. I think those are different things. I mean, I think they can work together, but yeah, having resources in our department to support employee ownership is a different thing. So I love union membership programs if they're anything. And with, yeah, ironworkers, the electrical workers has a great apprenticeship program. Yeah, I would love for us to also to support those more and to raise awareness about those more too.
But I would just push back and say, I think it's gonna be really important to support the Office of Economic, well, not, of Diversity and Equity, pushing out this pilot program, and I don't wanna create a duality or confusion in the community. And it would be helpful to kind of push in on that employee ownership through that. And maybe there's some way to kind of, if there's a way to wrap it in, that seems better than trying to set it off a contractor in this direction, especially with the staffing challenges that are in the workforce economic development right now. But I'm just pushing that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I think this is a distinct request. Of course, you know, if folks like it and move forward, folks don't, they won't. The organization that North Carolina Employee Ownership Center has an existing partnership with OEWG. They already contract with them, so I don't think it would be much of a lift for OEWG staff to just expand the piece of work that they're doing for us. But yeah, you know, challenges in the department, of course, fully acknowledged.
I think the vocation apprenticeship pilot and employee ownership technical support pilot program are more alike than the community conversation review and reboot and design lab pilot. I mean, I saw those as distinctly different. One very much tethered to our budget process. The design lab pilot is something that's far different than, you know, our budget process. So so with that said, I think there's more similarity between those two than, you know, the previous two that we linked together. With that being said, I'm wondering with the work that Built to Last is doing and building capacity with business owners, if an employee ownership technical support pilot program could be part of the menu of things when we talk about access to capital for business owners, shared economic prosperity, and also those that have existing programs and existing companies to explore the benefits of employee-owned companies, which I think is a great thing and support. I'm wondering if that's something that can be housed in Build to Last, which we've already put significant money in. That all you gotta do is.
So, you know, when you use the terminology house that built to last. Built to last is a separate legal entity, in its own organization, so, you know, that would require additional, you know, conversation in terms of, you know, assigning, you know, something to an external party. What I would say is, in most cases, you know, we do try to do RFPs for any of these services because we want to make sure that the most, you know, appropriate and most qualified entity gets to, you know, at least participate, unless it is something that is very, so unique that only one organization is actually doing. So I know that you know, an organization has been mentioned here that's, you know, specifically involved in that work. I don't know if there's other organizations that might also be.
That is the time, so any last comments?
Just briefly, I support it. I think that, however, we are doing it in some ways, we invested $500,000 to build the last. They're supposed to focus on equity, an equity fund to help folks start their own business. I believe we made some contributions to this last year of 120. Is that right?
Contribution what?
Did we not do something like this last year?
No, I visited before.
But I think that there's a lot of similarities that are already going, similar, not specifically, but there are some things that are really similar to it. So I support the idea, but I'd like to analyze a little bit more, so I rely on staff for that.
All right, let's go ahead and vote on. Okay. All right, the next yellow is grassroots violence prevention efforts submitted by Councilmember Halsey Hyman. Create funding to create and provide funding for grassroots violence prevention efforts in Durham that uses innovative pathways to foster strong community engagement, empowerment of youth, and coordinated city services. I'll start my 6 minutes now. Number 12. Number 13. In the back.
Oh, that's
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, so this is one that I also put in, so can everybody hear me? And again, I didn't put the amount in, but again, that staff looks at what they can be like. In terms of the grassroots prevention program and again, I wanted to look at whatever programs are being, that are actually doing this now to try to enhance funding for them again, because you've got a lot of violence going on. Am I? Okay.
I wanted to, again, same thing, I supported, obviously, I just want to make sure that we are aligning it with what's already out there. By definition, it sounds like the Bull City United efforts, which I believe already went through. But I just need a little clarification on how they differentiate.
Well, I know that they're doing that program, but again, because we have so much going on with youth, I think we need to enhance more of the program to prevent gun violence for the youth and communities. So it might, I mean, it could be an overlap, but I guess I'm just so very much passionate about putting more services out there for, because it's just every day a youth getting killed or, you know, the safety in the communities. And so just trying to wrap more services around the youth.
I was gonna ask if this, because it feels similar to the initiated, human health and task force item with the university, just, I know you managed to in some conversation around making sure that there was some social work on that. And is there a way to expand it from there as opposed to setting our new?
Well, they're doing more stuff around trauma and around, you know, dealing with people who have been victims of trauma. And so that's how we were able to kind of get that going. But this was more about also just getting just more services around, out there around gun violence and safety in the communities.
And when you say services, what does that look like?
More programming,
And I'm pressed because I think that this is exactly what Hayti and Justice Movement is trying to implement. And so maybe there's some way to have some conversation with them about funding that might align.
yeah, I'm fine.
But I would support if this was actually Hayti Justice Movement, like that would be, I would definitely be on board with you, then we are working with the folks who are formerly, gang members and being out in the community as well, and provide that kind of extensive support or extended support for the youth.
Yeah, I'll just quickly associate myself with Councilman Freeman. I, listen, we feel you on this and, I think any one of us may have multiple sound bites somewhere out in the universe where we need to do more. I remember being admonished one time by a person who said, well, if you look at your budget, this is what that is. This is what that is. This is what that is. And I think there are a number of things that we can point to. Listen, I think guaranteed income is grassroots of violence prevention. I think what we're going to be doing under the Marshall Plan with Hayti or the story is violence prevention. I think when we expanded Bosa United, that was grassroots. So I think there's a number of things we can point to in the budget that capture the spirit of what you're putting in. I feel you, and I totally agree with this. I just don't know moving this forward as that item package as it is with $400,000 price tag, what that looks like in this form. I know what it looks like when I look at the budget and point at other things and say, yeah, that's what that is. So I feel you. I think it's an appropriate, and I appreciate you constantly, refocusing the conversation and pointing us to that. But I think that we can point to a number of things in the budget that indicate that's what we do or trying to. People can decide how effective it's so.
Well, I'm fine if it can be someplace else in the budget and we're funding that, because you know what I mean? So that really is the premise of me just trying to make sure we're getting more stuff out there for
Right.
violence and prevention.
And I think it is. I think it is.
So I'm fine if, if it's someplace else. Yeah, I'm looking for, if it's someplace else, if I can see it someplace else, I don't have a problem.
I think you're gonna see it in a couple of different spaces. That would associate my comments. All that's been said, that I think we're doing a number of things. I think when you look at the apprenticeship program, that keys into that. Because either you're gonna work on the streets, or you're gonna work on a regular track. And so anytime that we interface in that area, we're gonna make a dent. So I think you're gonna get
So
it.
I'm fine with pulling it if I can see it someplace else.
Okay. All right.
In that case, we will go on to the next yellow, which is the home ownership education pilot, also submitted by Councilmember Lyndsay. The City of Durham pilot community resident education for navigating the path to home ownership workshops. Go ahead.
So the reason why I did this was because when we had that deep dive and we had that list that we all looked at in terms of the amount of people who are renting and trying to get them to be moved to home ownership. And again, I just think that you've got to start that conversation. I know, back in the day, there were programs out there about first home buyers, things like that, right? I do think in our conversations before, some of my council members said we might be able to partner with other people to get this done. I know myself and Councilmember Williams had already began to discuss this with some of the other, if you remember, some of the other not-for-profits and other places that were gonna meet with us to, I think we met with one of them, but to kind of get this going, because it really just stemmed from that list that we all were like, oh my God, we gotta move these people, our residents from the renting, the amount of money that it costs to rent to homeowners. So I do feel that it could be maybe not that much money, but I could partner with other entities, because myself and Councilmember Williams have already really tried to have those conversations, but that's really where it came from,
I would just say, I yay for home ownership. Personally, I know when we passed the housing bond, part of the initiative, our Forever Home initiative is promoting ownership, and I think there's funds in there. Yeah, Madam Manager, I see you.
Thank you for that. So, the Forever Home Durham program, does have, a goal to have 400 homeownership opportunities over a 5-year period. Whenever we are involved in home ownership initiatives, home buyer training, childhood certified, consultant is always part of it. And I think there's about a total of about $600,000 in the Forever Home Durham program for the consultative services around home ownership that include this the scope of what you're discussing here. So it is included in Forever Home Durham. Obviously we're in discussions right now about the pot of money. I think there's over $5.7 million in the Forever Home Durham program that actually is gonna end up being invested in our residents who are trying to become homeowners in some kind of way. And there is an administrative component of that includes home buyer workshops.
All right,
And with that, based upon that, I would think that making sure that what we're doing with Forever Home, I think would be, I would lean towards that rather than advancing this particular item as it's packaged here, because I know we're doing significant work there.
yeah, and thank you for that knowledge, because I didn't know that, and so I think, I will withdraw it. I just want to make sure that when I saw that list, I was appalled at how many people that we can try to get to, and we all work to home ownership. So that's where that stemmed from, but I'll pull it if this is already being done. I just want to make sure that we try to tap into those families that was on that list.
Can you explain which list?
It was the list that, I forgot the list, it was the list we were at the deep dive with, housing.
And that's what I just wanted to make sure that I did mention that. I think the council member of Hyman's point, we missed an opportunity to get 1,178 people actually into homeownership because of that whole issue that the Durham Realtors Association brought up. Just acknowledge that I think 76 actually qualified.
Yeah.
And they weren't eligible for, we didn't get the program up and running in a way that they could actually use it for those second mortgage needs. And so I think there's a home buyer piece to this that definitely needs to be honed in. And I know
And reevaluated and retweaked, and
and so I think that the deep dive conversation helped to nail down some of the solutions around that. And that I'm hopeful that the community development department is going to be working with those folks who offered to support. And so I do think that there is a solution in place based on your raising that issue.
There's also a lot of work being done with the Harvard Bloomberg Perk initiative around home ownership and this rental issue, housing issue. So I think you see a little bit of that. And of course, if we're able to raise the matching funds from PERC, that there is also some funding that can be allocated through that process.
How much do we need to raise for that?
2.5 million as a match.
And how much do we have so far?
We have 0 from Durham, and we're the only city that does not have it. Matching funds. Everybody else has their match.
Any last points of discussion? Would you like to vote on this one, or would you like to?
Councilmember said she.
yeah, I'm fine, as long as I see it, handled in another area.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, moving along to the next yellow item, which is CIP Fayetteville Street Planning Group request. Moving the items listed from the Fayetteville Street Planning Group into the CIP. This was submitted by Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. And I will say that this is specifically just asking for the council to really consider prioritizing the CIP so that Fayetteville Street does get the attention it needs in our capital improvement planning. Because it was highlighted yesterday at the chamber event and acknowledging that North Carolina Central, that corridor is the kind of like the gateway to North Carolina Central, and coming from 147, the Fayetteville Street corridor. It had a study already done. It had a plan in place, and it's kind of stalled, and that stalling has been about almost 20 years. And so just asking for council support around making sure that those items actually do move forward. Is mainly the purpose of this item, not really a dollar. If there's no need for a dollar amount, I think it's already in the CIP, we just need to move it up.
Sure, thank you. My concern here is that this is a budget request with an unknown budget primarily. So I'm wondering if we can get more information about what this would actually cost.
And I think, because there's so many like sidewalk, kind of like streetscape focused items, it's gonna vary. And so depending on when we actually do get to it, I mean, it could be 25,000, it could be, 25 million, but it's all timing. And so when it initially came forward, it was about 8 million.
Thank you. That's a really big range. So I just feel like we, I don't feel like this is ready to move forward yet. I think we maybe need a working group or something to figure out what specific proposals we're talking about, the amount of money that they would cost. And we have also recently reprioritized our CIP with the green equitable infrastructure frame, and I'm sure this fits into that. But it seems like it's we're asking staff to do another reprioritization. And I don't know if are we then saying we want Fayetteville Street prioritized over the other areas of the city that we decided we need to advance because of equity concerns? I feel like there's a lot of questions.
That's exactly what acknowledge that this, because this is such a historic corridor that's been destroyed by 147, it's kind of hard to not address it separate and apart from some of the other areas that have been left behind as well. And so
You think we should address it separately? Okay. I think this is a task force maybe rather than.
This is more of a process matter. Is there a way we can look at the next 4 together? Because they all seem to be around the same area.
If I might, I want to take what Councilmember Freeman said at face value. She said, rather than, and I don't want to do violence, paraphrase, rather than, the budget item to look at the CIP. So I want to take that at face value. He's asking us to look, and we're doing that. And I think to your point, the whole animating thrust behind the Marshall type, it's not the Marshall Fund, that's the Marshall type plan is precisely looking at all of the voices and groups in that Fayetteville Street corridor, ULI, that group, Hey Tyler Born as well, and beginning to address the historic disinvestment. And I think the reason why that was green light and why these are yellow is because I think we did sense that all of these next ones are being addressed by that particular one that we've green lighted. But I totally resonate with you. I think, what we do on Fayetteville Street will position Durham as a mecca for visitation, like the folks go to the National Museum of Washington, go to Harlem, go to Atlanta. That area should be a boom for our city, not just for Black folk, but even from a tourism point of view for Durham. Folks should be planning to come to Durham to see where Shepherd and Moore and the streets they walk on in St. Joe. And I think that's part of what we're talking about when we talk about Marshall type plan, all of those things that are coming next. A piece of that money is just a down payment. It's not going to be enough to do everything we want to do, but it will be a historic down payment for an American municipality to earmark those type of funds for that type of historic redress.
And Mr. Allore.
Yes, I just wanted to add that you will be getting a CIP capital recommendation in the spring. And but what I can't vouch for, and we will certainly flag anything that is related to Fayetteville. I do not recall, I don't know what pieces in what I've seen so far are related to Fayetteville. But and we can only recommend what a department submits. So I do not know what is shovel ready for FY24. We're in the process of determining that. But it is certainly on our radar as we discuss these next items.
And if it helps, I really appreciate Councilmember Johnson pointing out that it could be a task force. If it helps to kind of bring it to a subcommittee, I know the Northeast Central Durham subcommittee hasn't held meetings. It could be at that meeting that we actually do focus on this and acknowledge that not just the Marshall Plan, but the Federal Street Corridor, utilize Federal Street streetscape, and then also this K-tie on this kind of like, all of them are centering exactly what Mayor Pro Tem said, and I think that we will figure out what that plan looks like with these conversations. I want to say that 10 million is not enough. And that's what I'm stressing to my colleagues, acknowledging that at this very moment, we have ARPA dollars still available. And if we can really invest and where the disinvestment kind of ripped a community apart, it is Federal Street. And I would really like to get at least 4 of us on the same page around making sure that that does move forward in the way that it needs to. And the subcommittee is 4 of us.
Thank you. I really want to appreciate seeing her on the page, because we've had a few conversations around this. I would like to have a better understanding. There was the update around the green and equitable infrastructure dollars at the budget retreat, whatever, 2 weeks ago, where we talked about the Stokesdale neighborhood and some of the things there. There's the Fayetteville corridor and the transit plan that the county is funding, and I kind of want to have a better idea of where are the dollars now, because they live in various pots, both on the city and the county side. So that we can communicate it to the neighborhood itself, right? So these are already funded, right? This is already moving forward. And then where are the gaps there? So we're not just throwing out a number when actually lots of things are actually being funded. It's just not necessarily the narrative is holistic in a way for folks to understand it. So I think that's my ask of staff, is to kind of bring back to us a clear picture. I don't care if it's CIP or it's this or that. I think folks really want to see, where does this all live, and what are the dollars that have already been committed to your community, and then where's the deficit having it?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councilman Caballero. To Councilmember Freeman's point, you're right. And alas, that is precisely what's getting ready to happen. Alas, after all these years, all these decades in our city, we are on the threshold for the first time, actually spending earmarking a significant amount of money for historic redress for the Hayti community in the Fayetteville Street Corridor. Is it enough? Of course it's not enough. Our budget's $500 million. Our entire budget is not enough to address the harm and injustice that has occurred in that community. But for the first time in our city's history, we are on the threshold of actually putting real money on the table. $10 million, yeah. Talk about ARPA, we've already committed what's left of that 20-some-odd million we collect. We've already committed 10 million to do those affordable housing projects with the county. That 10 million, the remaining 10 million may very well be the 10 million for this. So you're not going to get any pushback when you say it's not enough. Of course it's not enough. But after all these decades, the city's 150 years old, we have finally come to a point where government is actually going to start the process of addressing those inequities and historical injustices. And I don't think we should let the perfect be the enemy of the good. We are at the door of historic redress in the city, and Durham's going to lead in that.
Yes.
I was just gonna
Oh, go ahead.
sorry. I was just gonna ask Mr. Allure a question. I appreciate Mayor Pro Tem, it's definitely I cheer you on in this. But I just wanted to ask, I know that this year we've had a surplus. I just wanted to ask the amount again.
So as we presented at the second quarter financial report update, the projected surplus at the end of fiscal year 2023 is approximately $30 million.
And I just want to make sure that I highlight that that's essentially what I was feeling in December, and this 38 million that's been proposed fits into that along with the ARPA dollars. And so I'm just putting it out for the council, as these are great ways to actually do exactly what Mayor Pro Tem said. That's all. And I can withdraw those 2 items, just acknowledging that it's up to council to figure this out, because it's gonna take more than 10 minutes. And we do have a surplus, projected surplus this year of 30 million, as well as 10 million left in ARPA, which is $40 million. And I would say that 38 million is the number, between Hayti Reborn, Justice Movement, the Marshall Plan, the Federal Street Corridor. And I mean, all of the other things in our CIP that will need to come forward on an annual basis. It doesn't all have to happen in 1 year. But I do think that putting a plan together, whether task force or subcommittee, however, we still need to have the conversation about what is gonna happen and how we're gonna do that, because staff can't just make it come together for us. So, that was all. Thank you.
I did want to just mention a few things, and none are in conflict with what has been said here, with, how much money is available. Just to bring to your attention, our fund balance excess is $30 million. That is for the, it is for the rainy day fund of the government. So there are other, there are a lot of new initiatives that departments have put forward that also could be funded with one-time dollars if they're prioritized by the council. So I wanted to make sure that we're putting in perspective that $30 million is there, and it is a fixed amount of money, but it is, it could potentially have some other needs of the government. But we certainly hear what the council is saying here. We know that there's also at this point, $12 million of unallocated ARPA funding. That is one-time funding, and it is a big pot. And we expect to be transparent. We expect for you all to know which pots of money we're looking at in order to try to fund the initiatives that you tell us to go forward with. And they do overlap. It is not easy. It is very complex because there are multiple funding sources. We just want to make sure that you have all of the data that you need. You know about the timing, you know which projects are shovel ready, which projects have to have funding in future years, so that we do our budgeting and our strategic planning, our capital planning, in a responsible way. So I just wanted to put those comments on the record.
I just want to say, again, being out there in the community, this community has been promised that something's gonna happen. And I just want to go on the record saying that it needs to happen. So if this happens within the Marshall Plan, if this happens and all these things are overlapping, I just want to make sure that it is happening, because I really, when I go in the community, this is the community, like, they have been suffering with what's not happening in that area. So wherever it's gonna fall, I just want to say that I'm going to support it.
And I just want to add a couple of things. I do think we have a unique opportunity to do some of the historic investments over in that community. I think the timing is really great too. When you consider that the World Games are going to be coming in North Carolina Central University, is going to be a host university for those games in about, I think it's 2029. And so we all know that that corridor needs a lot of work between now and that time. And they're anticipating, I think, 1 million or so people that will be traveling between the 3 counties. So I do believe that some of our state representatives have put forth some infrastructure needs for North Carolina Central University itself. I know that we have at least 2 to 3 different groups who are working over in Hayti and have submitted to us different plans. And so I think it will behoove us to have a real detailed look at that area to figure out with the 10 million that we're already talking about, the budgetary constraints that we may need to think about how we're going to utilize our ARPA money as well as the other needs of the government, that we really take a good look at that we commit that we are going to put monies in there. I am fully ready to move forward on at least 10. I think this is another one of those places where we can put it up to. But as we're rolling out all of this, I'm reminded that we're probably going to have to go back and kind of put it in context today as to what we did on last week and what we've done today to make sure that we are moving along with our budgetary responsibilities and making sure that the city's, needs can be met. I think all of those things that can be done, but I do wish that we can figure out a way that we're not only talking about what the city is gonna do over that corridor, but what the state is, what we can possibly get them to do, as well as the feds, over in that arena, and figure out how we can make it all work together. That's one.
Thank you. I was just gonna say, I appreciate that, and just in following up, what I'm hearing the city manager say, the manager Page say, is that the 10 million from ARPA would be better used in our departmental needs. Is that it? Okay, we want to get some clarification. And the 30 million that is in our fund balance excess could be better used for our department needs, or is it better that we're using our current budget? Like, help me understand exactly where those department needs should sit, and if they are $40 million versus $10 million.
So whenever we are evaluating new needs for the organization, every budget year, that is fund our operational budget for the upcoming year, as well as to fund our CIP. We're looking at all sources that are available, and we're looking at applying them in the best way possible. And I will give you an example. ARPA funding is $10 million. There's a clock on the ARPA funding in terms of when it must be contacted and when it has to be spent. Those two dates are 2024 into 2024 for actual contracting into 2026 for that the project is complete. So we like to get a bigger picture of what we are actually funding before we recommend the funding source that is being used, because we want to make sure that the government is getting the best benefit from the dollars that are available. Our own funding, our rainy day fund, that is something that we have all the time. It goes up, it goes down, but there's no time limit on the investment of it. There's an opportunity in our CIP to cash fund items that we have a policy, we have a debt policy that we try to fund about 10% of our CIP with cash, but if we have additional cash, there are times when we may be able to fund a little bit more of that and make our debt capacity a little higher. So we don't want to get bogged down in terms of priorities with looking at the dollar figures that are there, because we want to be able to use our expertise to help the council determine where best the funding comes from, even whether or not certain funds can legally be used for certain types of initiatives, and others may not be able to. So I want to be really clear. We're not saying in this meeting we're going to use fund balance for departmental requests and ARPA for council requests. We're not at that point. We need additional time. Once the council decides the highest priority, you actually are almost to the end of this now, and you're going to actually see the staff present to you at the end, how much is deemed to be one-time funding, how much is deemed to be ongoing funding in your request. And certainly if it's one-time funding, you can be pretty sure that it would likely come from fund balance, because that is one time, or likely come from ARPA, because that's one time. But we still have work to do before we can be final about it.
I really appreciate that, because it does give context to what my requests initially were, and just acknowledging that we have Operation CIP and that kind of grander investment, as the mayor was mentioning and as Mayor Pro Tem was mentioning. And so I think it may be helpful to keep that Federal Street planning as a priority separate, and to actually vote so that folks understand that we are moving forward, making sure that CIP is funded at a level that actually does allow for projects that been historically missed to be covered. Does that make sense? So based on what the city manager is saying to me, or what I'm hearing, I'm saying, is that the reprioritization is helpful. And the green and equitable infrastructure bond in the future is helpful. But if we really want to make sure that the Federal Street, which needs to stay apart and alone, is funded, is that maybe we're looking at some of those excesses as going towards CIP specifically and making sure that that corridor is actually done, whether it's with state and federal money in tandem, that it's also in the CIP, it's all like, to Director Allore's point, if it's not in the CIP, they can't really build out to 2029. If that makes sense. I'm jumping out here, trying to push us a little bit further on this, because I do know that 2029 seems like it's far away. But this would be the year that you put all those items into the CIP so that we program it over the next 5 years.
Madam Mayor, if I might, Councilman Freeman, respectfully, it sounds like you're trying to win something you've already won. We're gonna have a CIP, as you well know, you've been here as long as I have, we're gonna have our CIP as part of our budget approval process, as already has been alluded to earlier, brought before us. I think for purposes of this discussion, keeping fidelity with our mission right now, I think it's more than clear that, I mean, you've already said, you advise us that you want us to prioritize in the CIP. I agree with you. We've been doing that. We've been moving things around in the CIP, and we still have time to have that discussion when the CIP comes before us. But for us to vote now to change the CIP with no money, no number attached to it, I just don't, to achieve something that we have now arrived at. Fayetteville Street is going to be prioritized. Hayti is a priority with real dollars. So I mean, we've won. So I just don't, I don't understand what the request is. Everything you've said is either being addressed or will be addressed in real terms.
I appreciate that. I think just the point of clarity is that some of the items aren't in this map. So they need to be, like, we would need to actually support moving them into the CIP.
And when the CIP comes before us, we should probably have that discussion then.
And that's fine. I just want to make sure that it's clear that that's not in the
We got
CIP.
So as I try to process where we are now, we have already talked about the Durham type market plan at 10 million out of the budgetary process. We still have other monies that can be used over in that area if we so choose from the offer process, or even in the CIP process, or even in the surplus process. So today, though, we're concentrating on this piece of the plan, and at a later time, we'll visit those other parts. Is that where everybody kind of is at this point? In terms of these three last items that we're dealing with, so is that a point of clarity?
Yes, for me.
Is it 21 through 24 that we're kind of putting one together? That's how I interpret it.
Yeah. The CIP, Hayti Reborn, Marshall Plan, ULI.
I would just say that it's not up to 10 million. That's the piece that messes us up. Is that it's actually up to 38 million.
Right. Well, out of that, not out of the budgetary process, yeah. Out of the budgetary process, today, we're talking about 10 million. And then we visit the other pieces at the appropriate times, is what I'm saying. Or are you saying you want up to 38 in the budget process?
I would say that I wouldn't say up to 10. 10 is the floor.
And if I might just say for the record, I am not going to raid the city's fund balance or our reserve and in one fell swoop commit the amount that we have in reserve. We're a self-insured city. At any given time, something may face our municipality that we need the agility that comes with having cash on hand to address. I mean, listen, 500 million is our budget, and that's not enough to address what has happened on Fayetteville Street. So I'm not gonna even create the impression to those who might be listening to this meeting, that for me, it's on the table that we're going to take our entire savings account and put it towards any one thing, whatever it is. So I just want to put that out there for those who might be listening to this.
And that was what I was trying to get to, is that that's what the message is that we're gonna just do 10 million and 10 million. And so if that is the case, then we need to split this out. And we need to do one by one, because I wanna make sure that I know who's on board with supporting Federal Street CMP, who's on board with supporting the Hayes Reborn, and who's on board with supporting the Federal Street corridor and the realized pieces.
Everyone who supports Marshall Plan is on board with supporting everything you said.
She
Literally.
just said, I mean, $10 million is not enough, so that's not the case. So we just separate that and just look at each one.
It's where we're starting.
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit confused on process. Not comfortable, like, and I think I was pretty clear on my request, which is we are spending a lot of different pots of public dollars that sit in different buckets that affect this neighborhood. And I want to continue that investment. I think we need to increase that investment, but I am not in any way ready to name any kind of dollar up to 10 million, up to 38 million, until I can see the actual totality of dollars. I want to see like, oh, we're actually already spending $20 million in this corridor. And then I can say, okay, then what else are the needs and how do we program that out? And so I don't have that information and I can't make an educated determination until I have that information. So I agree with the concept moving forward. Absolutely, this is a corridor that has been very much disinvested in. We all understand that.
Welcome to our frustration.
Yeah.
Because this has been every year. And so every year I've bought Federal Street corridor. Every year that we've had this conversation, for 6 years, it's been this Federal Street corridor. And this one item hasn't moved forward. And so I just want to make sure that it's clear where folks stand on each of them. Because the Hayes Reborn Justice Movement is not 18 million, it's 6 million each year for 3 years. And there needs to be there needs to be specifics, because this is how it gets washed over and then it gets missed. That's why the project didn't move forward last year. Like, that's why, like, there just needs to be specifics in it. And I agree with everything you just said. And that if we don't do the specifics, we don't get to the number. We don't
Right, but I
get
guess
to-
what I'm saying-
We don't get to which projects, we don't get to where the money is actually going. And so it gets further and further away from where the
I'm
initial
gonna-
point was.
I think our managers.
So we are, and I know you all are continuing to talk about these last 4 items. You know, we do have right now in green, we talked about at the beginning of the process, that you're gonna kind of take a look at what is in green at the very end and determine whether or not that is the number that you're giving the manager and the administration as the total council approved projects that you want to see us try to incorporate in the budget. Right now, if staff would go over the amounts that we have that are in green right now, we make sure that we're capturing that, and not just how much, but whether it is a one-time investment or if it is a recurring investment. So I would like for the budget staff to go over that right now, because anything else we add is going to be in addition to what you all have already said is great. So.
And Christina, if you would do that, that would be very helpful to summarize what is in green there on.
Sure. So we have, for one time, we have $10.9 million. For 2 years, it's $1.4 million. For 3 years, it's $750,000. And then for reoccurring, we have almost $2.8 million for a total of $15 million.
And
And could you remind them,
So-
not of every item?
Yeah,
I think
so-
the big ticket.
The
item.
big ticket, the one big ticket item in the one time is the $10 million master plan. And I can pull up all the greens if that's helpful too.
thank you. I really appreciate that. I am very comfortable moving. I mean, like, I can already see that just that right there is going to be a challenge for staff to incorporate based on all the departmental asks that we haven't even seen. And the fact that I think we've all committed to, we're not raising taxes this year. So We haven't come to that, okay, thank you. So, yeah, I think we just need to be honest with ourselves about what we're asking staff to do and to not, you know, math is math, numbers are numbers, and not do, you know, magical thinking here. So I know I'm 1 of 7. I'm good with that. I already am quite frankly kind of panicked by it. That doesn't mean we shouldn't move forward on it, and that's where I'm at. So I would say that what we've said yes to so far, I don't want to go further than that.
Madam Mayor, if I might, and I just, you know, Councilman Freeman and I have been on council the exact same amount of time. I can't recall any council asked, since I've been on here, where anyone has actually asked for, as a budget request, a council budget request, for money for the Fayetteville Recorder. We have talked about it, and, you know, I've been talking about a Marshall plan for years, but, you know, elections have consequences and the configuration of the council has changed. But as far as, you know, the characterization that it didn't go forward, it's never been on our agenda like this before. Well, for the record. But again, I just want to be clear that trying to create, and I've spoken to representatives of every one of those initiatives. And this didn't come out of I was in a meeting just a few days ago about clarifying some of this stuff and how we're going to discuss it with my one-on-one with the manager. About what this is actually going to look like, where the money's going to be housed, what the initiatives are going to look like, potentially look like. So this isn't being made in a vacuum. And those folk, every one of those initiatives and interests, folk have weighed in. Some are happier than others, but this has not come forward in a vacuum. And once again, you are 100% right. The United States of America doesn't have enough money to repay folk who built the country. This country was built on their backs. But we're still having a conversation about reparations. So there's no argument that any amount that we start with is just not going to be enough. However, we're starting, and that's different. Alas, there's money on the table. So I just want to respectfully put that, you know, there is actual movement occurring and will occur. And this isn't the end. We'll have a budget cycle next year where we can talk about more money, and the year after that. And when that corridor is activated and is one of the most visited places in America or at the top of Durham's tourism list, you know, money tends to be debt money. So this is just the beginning. It's not the end. And I think we should treat it as such. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
So for clarifying question, are we gonna use them separate or together to go on?
As I'm looking at this number, and mind you, keep it in mind that pretty big number. I do think that we need to make sure that what we've already approved, we have room for. And we also need to make sure that the departmental requests come before us before we move further. On the big ticket items. There are pots of money out there we can choose not to, or to use some of that to enhance pay time over the quarter. And I think all of us recognize its historic value to us and how we cannot make up for that as a city. And the reason why I would ask that we allot what we have now is that will give us the opportunity to do as council or Woman Caballero has suggested, and to a certain extent, Council Freeman, we figure out what exactly, who are the other folks that need to be sitting at this table to contribute? And what are we willing to contribute? And that needs to be a broader conversation outside of our budget process. We know we have 10, but that's a starting point. But there are some other folks that need to be included in this conversation, our state, our county, DOT, all of those folks, and we can kind of get a better picture of where else we need to lean in. And on some of those other ones, we still have time to come back. Still have a little bit of ARPA money that we're gonna have to deal with. Not a lot, but we have I don't want to even go down that road until we definitely have a commitment from the county on the 4 projects. We're in talks with them. But they're talking about it, but I don't know if that has formally come before their board. To make a vote, I do not think that, so until we know if their board will pass. For those housing that we've already committed to, I'm hesitant to go beyond what we could do within our own budget, and within our own city budget process.
If I might. I think what maybe this and what I'm trying to say is that if we don't devise a process, then it still just falls to the wayside. And that's all. It's not whether we move forward any additional dollars, it's just what is the process? Because CIP, if it's not in the CIP, how does it get in the CIP? If it's not, if DOT hasn't explained what they are gonna put forward, then how do we move it into the budget? Like, all of that,
Right.
those pieces have to be laid out. And if we're only limiting ourselves to $10 million is what I'm concerned about, then we miss the opportunity to actually have an investment and a plan for an investment that does end where 2029, that road doesn't look like it does right now. That's all. And so it's not whether we do one or the other. It is really what is gonna be the process to actually get us to the point where we have them in the CIP and all of the programming that have like get spelled out.
So, and I think we started out with the idea that we could look at I think you suggested a committee, and maybe that's the place that we sit within. And add other folks in as we need to, but today I want to be sure that we have an agreement that we stop right here, allow our staff to come back with us to kind of give us a more balanced picture. And then during that time when we reconvene those, we'll get and start exploring the idea that we don't have a picture of where we are. Okay. So we're gonna stop there.
Yes, stopping at the green is very good. But I wanted to just to kind of rephrase some of the maybe anxieties around what does the whole picture look like. There are numerous, as the city manager alluded to, funding options. And the budget guidelines, which you will discuss this afternoon, are constructed in such a way that there are opportunities and levers for the city manager to pull to come up with the best possible plan to achieve what has been asked so far. So I would just simply ask, we're feeling the anxiety too about what it looks like. And once we give us some time to work on that, and we'll come up with the best possible use of whether it's fund balance, which has competing interests, whether it's CIP, whether it's ARPA, whether it's general fund tax dollars. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. End it 2 minutes out. So unless there's anything else that will claim our attention, we will adjourn this special meeting of the City Council on budget item at 11:50 a.m. on March 23rd, 2023. And we will see you all at 1 o'clock for our work session in regular chambers.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.